Hey, ladies and gents, it's Sam back, and we are doing. Alright, so Stone Cold Elf sent me a link to the thing. I seen it kind of bandied around on the Game Center. Skull asked me about it today during a stream on Warplanes. So, my thoughts. Yeah, so let's go back to um, 9.18. About a year ago, Matchmaker got changed. Don't know if it was asked for. I'm not even sure what was the reasoning behind it. They were going to rebalance it. For the most part, I thought the rebalance was going to be for tank to tank, essentially meaning that you were going to get the same amount of, if you had two heavy tanks on one side, you get two heavy tanks on the other side instead of one medium or two mediums, or two TDs or some of that bullshit. Because we know how that always turned out. Because you would get a medium map, and the other team would have all mediums, and you would have heavies, blah blah blah. I thought that's kind of what the matchmaking was going to be changed, but no, they brought in what we call the 357, which is essentially you have three top tiers, five middle tiers, and seven low tiers. And why am I talking about this with the premium matchmaking? Because this is the reason why I can't take that back. They've talked about changing preferential matchmaking tanks for like 4 fucking years. And even now in the article, and I'm going to show you the article here, they're not even totally really committing to it that I can, that's kind of, um, you know, uh, yeah, we're thinking about doing it, but we're not, yeah, blah, 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 kind of bullshit. It's a wargaming thing, right? So this might not happen for fucking years, who knows? But once again, they're putting this article up here. I'm not sure, just to cause controversy, whatever. But here's the problem with the preferential matchmaking tanks. They don't fit in the 357 matchmaking scheme. And unfortunately, in wargaming's, I don't know if it's hindsight or just the fucking sheer fuck up that happened with the 357, they are going to try to do something about it because apparently, and this is actually in their own words, the 357 somehow fucks up the preferential tanks somehow fuck up 357 matchmaking. Essentially, what they're saying is that the reason why we have such a shitty time with 357 is that preferential tanks are screwing the matchmaker. What is this bullshit? Well, it's totally bullshit. I mean, as soon as I remember, almost immediately after 9.18, people were starting to complain about it, and all of a sudden we had grand battles because that was going to lessen the load of tier 10s in queue, and blah blah blah. Yeah, that didn't work either. So, what is this rebalance of the premium the preferential premiums? Is this a rebalance to just another excuse why 357 isn't working? I'm not sure, and I'm just going to speculate here, just because it's a actually brilliant money making scheme as far as I'm concerned. 357, if you're not familiar with it and what it's did, has essentially turned matchmaking into before 9.18. If you were, say, a tier 8 tank, you had roughly about a 50% chance of being top tier in all your games. So if you played 10 games, five times you were most likely going to be top tier. About 30% of the time, so 3 out of 10, you were going to be mid tier, and of course about 20 to 30% of the time you were going to be low tier. And I'm not making those numbers up. That was statistics that were done by a bunch of different tankers that went through and did all the work. Using sample sets of about 1,000 games and figuring it out. However, after 9.18, that matchmaker, with that template that they used, entirely switched that around. Now, on average, 1 out of every 10 games, actually it's like 7 or 8%, roughly 30% of the games, 30 to 40% of the games, you are mid-tier, and 50% of the games, you are bottom tier. So, so essentially they completely flip-flopped how many times you're going to be at the top. And it's a beautiful piece of money-making. because the tier 8 is the most played tier in game for a reason, because of money making. And we're going to get to the preferential matchmaking and my opinion of why the fuck they did this. But with the preferential matchmaking tanks, this is just another excuse of why 357 does not work. But with the 357, what it did was taken tanks that made the most amount of money, the premium tanks, and it put them in positions where they were always undergunned, right? You're fighting tanks that are 2 tiers higher, 1 or 2 tiers higher than you are, all the time. Almost every game, you're always up against tanks that are better armored than you, which to the most degree forces players to, of course, use premium rounds. It also, about the same time, which is kind of an interesting thing, is when you started seeing a lot of these premium tanks come out that were really good, like better than their own tier tanks, right? So you had your stable full of premium tanks, that were awesome. You always made money in them, whatever. But then all of a sudden the matchmaker changed, and those tanks that were, they're a little bit less than the regular tier 8s. They weren't quite as performing as well. And then all of a sudden, wow, where did the defender, defender pops up? Well, this tank can play against 9s and 10s pretty well. It's a really tough tank. Well, here, we're gonna sell this to you, right? And then before it come along, and there were some mediums that were brought out. The Patriot was brought out, and all of a sudden, so we have some competitive premium tanks, and I'm not that I wasn't happy with the premium tanks I already had, but I'm not doing as much damage and I'm not making as much money. But here's some new premium tanks that that'll work out. So to me, it seemed like it was actually just an utter money grab. I mean, it worked out so well that it just happened that the matchmaker changed, and then all of a sudden we had premium tanks that came around that were like, they were a little bit before, right before, a little bit after the matchmaker changed. They just kind of shoved them in there, like, ooh, look, here's some tanks that are, for the most part, better than their and they can play against 9s and 10s better than the previous premium tanks that you already had in your garage, who was fine in the regular matchmaker making you, And this is my problem with that whole matchmaking thing. And this is kind of what come to my conclusion about the premium preferential matchmaking tanks. When I bought the preferential matchmaking tanks, and I'm speaking, specifically for, the IS-6, or the KV-5 or the FCM. You bought these tanks for a reason, right? These were the ultimate seal clubbing tanks. That means they were better than the 7s, not as quite as good as the 8s. They were like a 7.5, but you most of the time, 8 out of 10 battles, you saw tanks that were 6s and 7s, right? And you made your huge amount of money off of these preferential matchmakers. I mean, fuck, IS-6s were, it was a 100k game, 3k damage games, and FCM 50 tons, same thing, right? I mean, these were your money makers, these were your seal clubbing tanks, because to a certain degree, that's what they were designed to be. With the matchmakers they got, you saw mostly, 6s and 7s. With the new matchmaker, the 357, that's kind of flipped. Now, most of the time, you occasionally do get maybe 1 out of 10 games where you are seeing 6s and 7s. The vast majority of the time, you're seeing your own tier or 9s. IS-6s, they don't work well against T-75s. They don't work well against STIs. They have a hard time with their own tier tanks, Patriots, Defenders, things like that. Wheezy 111. There's another fine example, because they all have, like I said, low pen and terrible gun handling. They are, like I said, in fact, for the most part, less effective than regular Tier 8s. So, yeah, that's my problem with this. I bought this tank for a specific reason, right? To make vast loads of money off puppy tiers. I didn't buy him for any other reason, right? I was assured that for most part, most of my games was me running around shooting 6s and 7s and racking up 3K, 4K, 5K games in a tier 8 tank and, making 120 or 130,000 silver every game. Yeah, that's the reason I bought them. So, in Wargaming's, whether this was a diabolical plan when they introduced 357, or they actually didn't really fucking pay attention and they put the matchmaker in the game and it's totally fucked, these tanks no longer fit. So, Wargaming is going to take the preferential tanks and they are going to buff them. To whatever level, I'm not sure. I'm guessing they're not going to be Defender level, they're not going to be Patriot level, that kind of thing, because why would you, right? What they're going to do is if they're going to buff these tanks just enough to make them probably similar to their own tier tank, but they're going to give you an option. For an extra 2,000 gold, you can take that tank and change and trade it in for maybe a Patriot or maybe a Defender. Seems like that's pretty suspect, in my opinion, but hey, whatever. Or you can keep the tank as just as what it is. So, my opinion, it's all bullshit. It's complete incompetence or it's complete genius, however you want to look at it from Wargaming's perspective. My opinion, give us the full gold if we want to sell a tank, either in money or actual money, or give us the gold equivalent if we don't like the tank after you make your changes. Let's not do this while we're just gonna. I mean, if you want to, go ahead. If you want to leave the 2,000 gold there, if somebody wants to pay an extra 2,000 gold for another tank, that's fine too. But for the most part, I think it's just utter insanity that this is being done because, pure evil genius or a complete fuck up. And I'm not sure. I mean, really, honestly, you look at it both ways. This is typical Wargaming. We fucked up, so now we're going to try to fix it somehow other than admitting that we were wrong. Or the fucking another just huge cash grab for really, really good premium vehicles and leaving the rest in the dust. So, that's my thoughts. That's my, probably rambled on here for 13 minutes about this, but hey, it's what I do. So, you guys have a good night and thanks for watching.